Thank you for joining us. This is another episode of the 3-Minute Therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist, and I'm here with Dr. David Ramsey Steele, co-author of the great book, 3-Minute Therapy. Today we're going to be discussing a news item that I came across about Prince Harry, aka Duke of Sussex, and his discussion about why he has emotional problems. So the big picture, and then we'll give lots of illustrations, is that throughout his quotes, he claims that various situations cause his emotions. And that's the intuitive view, but it's not how emotions work. It's always our thinking about it. And secondly, throughout the article, he seems to give up his own power that he has to change his emotions by changing his thinking. So that is the main problem. So to quote a line in the article, it says, that Prince Harry says that Prince Charles, his father, handed down a cycle of genetic pain and suffering to him. David, I think you wanted to say something about that. Is that right?
Yes. Well, it struck me that he may not fully understand the meaning of the word genetic. Genetic would be something that you have inherited, and it would manifest itself even if you were adopted in infancy and didn't know your real parents. The genetic influence is precisely the influence that would then still prevail in your life. So genetic influences on people's personalities and their problems and so on are very powerful. That's been shown by lots of research. But this doesn't depend upon the way the parents behave to the children. He seems to combine the idea of genetic inheritance with the idea that the way your parents treat you has a big effect upon your development, which has been shown to be not true. It doesn't have a big effect upon your development. So either way, he's confused, but also there's a contradiction there, I think. And another thing about this is that you often find in the thinking of some people that they combine a belief that people are influenced by various irresistible forces with the belief that people are morally responsible. So they manage to combine this, whereas you would think that if people are really swayed by irresistible forces, it would be pointless to morally condemn them. But Harry manages to, if I may so refer to him, Harry, not my best buddy, but I have heard of him. Harry seems to take the view that he can combine a belief in sort of inevitability with a belief with the adoption of a kind of moral outrage.
To build on what you said about the effect of genetics or the influence of genetics on personality, there's a great book I highly recommend by Judith Rich Harris called The Nurture Assumption, and she presents many studies and puts them all together and puts the research together. And what she comes up with is that adult personality roughly is influenced by genetics about 50%, by out-of-home environment by 40%, and in-home environment, in other words, your parents, just 10%. So I recommend this book to Prince Harry, The Nurture Assumption by Judith Rich Harris.
Yes, it's a great book. It's a great book.
The article goes on to say, he treated me the way he was treated. This is another quote from Harry, and presumably about his father. So now he's talking about his grandfather. And again, he's putting everything on in-home environment, which has been shown to just be 10% of the influence on adult personality. Now, if he treated his son the way he was treated by his father, then we could put a lot of it up to the genetic influence, genes that were passed down from one generation to the other. You find with alcohol problems, there's a line of inheritance of alcohol problems. In other words, tends to run in the families, and that's probably the genetic influence. And then Harry goes on to say that he thought of leaving the royal life in his early 20s because of, quote, what it did to my mom, unquote. Now he's bringing in another wrong idea here, and that is the life screwed up his mom rather than her thinking about it. If we were to look at the histories of royalty, they had some different ideas, many similar ideas, many different ideas, different personality differences, personality similarities. So it's not just the royal life, that's another influence. But again, he's giving up the power he has to change his thinking to forge a different life. By the way, our next episode will be about, can you change your personality? So we'll be discussing that more in detail.
Right.
Another quote in the article from the Duke of Sussex, Harry, quote, it's a lot of genetic pain and suffering that gets passed on anyway. So again, as David so well pointed out, he's confusing a few things in genetics. And the pain doesn't get passed on at all. It's the thinking that causes your pain. So he's confusing the idea of what causes emotions. It's not situations, internal pain, external pain, genetic pain. That's the problem, but it's your thinking about it. In another section in this newspaper article, it says that Harry wants to break the cycle within his family after realizing that much of the way he was treated as a youngster was a result of how his own dad was raised. Again, reinforcing that idea. It sounds like he might be in psychoanalysis, and maybe he's learning this from his therapist.
Yes.
So that's pretty much the article. Oh, another one is where Harry chalks up to childhood trauma, in quotes, his wild partying as a young man. So he was partying because he had childhood trauma. Again, he's making himself into a victim. This is victimology, and as if it was his childhood trauma that made him party. So this is getting further and further afield. Right. By the way, he implies that moving to the U.S. Was forced on him by his childhood trauma. So just blame your childhood trauma and have some more sessions with your psychoanalyst. Okay, David, did you have a last word you wanted to
yeah, there's a number of things here. I think, first of all, if you look at Prince Harry, it bears out the truth of what Judith Rich Harris says in that wonderful book, because it's quite clear that all his attitudes are not formed by his upbringing. They're formed by the wider culture and by his peers. That you might expect, if childhood upbringing was so tremendously powerful, that Prince Harry would turn out to be a militant royalist and a militant devotee of family loyalty. But he spits on family loyalty and he spits on royalty.
That's reaction formation.
Right. Well, there is a psychoanalytic psychoanalytic explanation for anything, which is why
Right.
it can't be scientific. But certainly, his attitude. He tries to. Well, he doesn't try. He effortlessly plays into various fashionable beliefs that are spreading around among people who know nothing whatsoever about the science of personality development. And so, to that extent, he bears out the Judith Rich Harris theory.
Okay, great. Just to conclude, I'd like to mention that, again, I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. I have 40 years experience helping people with REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, which is the theme of our podcasts. And you can find my practice link and 3-Minute Therapy link in the description below. And comment below if you have thoughts about our discussion. Give us a like or thumbs up. Suggest subjects that you'd like us to discuss. Volunteer to come on. If you have a problem or an issue or a theory you'd like to run by us, we'd be happy to have you on. Donate to Patreon to support the podcast, and subscribe to us 3-Minute Therapy podcast to stay on the rational side of life.